Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first episode of the Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Owen, and I'm joined by two guests tonight in no particular order. I have Dan, who is the host of his own gaming and entertainment podcast on both Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Hello, Dan.
Hello, good evening.
There we go, very good. How are you tonight?
I'm good. Yeah, I've got my donuts, got my cup of tea, and I'm ready for chatting.
Excellent. Okay, and also Alice. And I've written radio worker here, but that doesn't sound right to me. It sounds like it should be radio broadcaster. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll go with broadcaster and presenter, as well as acting and voiceover work as well.
What a show off. Anyway, yes.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So this is obviously, this is called the Deep Dive podcast because we're going to be kind of having deep dive conversations about kind of current events sort of things. So yeah, tonight we're going over cancel culture, the rather broad spectrum, I know, but we're kind of going to try and get in the woodwork. And I'm going to start with a pretty broad question early on that I'm just going to throw at you two. Do we think cancel culture is a good thing overall?
Oh, what a difficult question, Owen.
Sorry, I kind of because I do myself. I do. I think if famous people can hire social media teams and things like that to paint unicorns and throw glitter glue everywhere online, then they deserve to have kind of, if they've done something bad in the past or they're doing something bad now, they deserve to kind of have that shown as well. I think hiding.
I'd say it all depends on what sort of, if you take it within context of what they've done in the past, because I've noticed a lot of times where they've had with comedians and like a lot of celebrities where they've done and said, or even often on social media where they've tweeted out or posted something on Facebook, about a decade ago. And then someone must have sat there for ages and ages digging up something. They found this little golden nugget that's like either like racist or sexist or something that's offended someone. Yeah. In this sort of time, and then everyone just jumps on the bandwagon of, we're all going to be fighting about cancel culture, and that's how it goes. And then obviously, it's going to be something that's overdue, and everyone jumps on it, and then even people like other celebrities join in, and it's kind of like a form of online bullying. It's just like they want this cancelled, they want this person out of a career, and I think, well, that's not fair because it's like that's happened years ago.
These unwritten rules, like who created them? I can't remember which comedian said this, but he was saying that certain jokes that he said 5-10 years ago were perfectly acceptable, and there was a line and he went up to that line and it was absolutely fine, but suddenly the line 10 years later has completely changed. So when he then says similar jokes, everyone suddenly gets really upset about it, and he says, well, no one's told me where the line is anymore and who made up that line in the first place. So although you're quite right, and people should be made aware that there are consequences to their actions, at the same time, who is that person saying exactly what those consequences should be? Exactly. Losing everything they've ever worked for, or something like that.
Yeah. I think here it's kind of one of the points that I raised when I was researching this, is that cancel culture is what used to be known as the court of public opinion, really, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
And I think you say that, it's interesting you say that about comedians, actually, Alice, because I think it's kind of, if you're preparing those jokes, and they do generally prepare material unless it's straight stand up, I think it's very much a public collective that decides those things, or I think maybe something happens and it's not okay anymore. But something that happens has to be pretty big for everyone to suddenly change their minds. So I think it's kind of the job of a comedian to understand that in a way. I feel like you've got to review your material. You've got to move with the times, I think.
Well, I suppose it's not only comedians as it is. I mean, you've also got the lines of celebrities, which could also be voice actors. Because I know there was one of something like what was his name? The actor that plays not Jafar, Iago, the voice of Iago in Aladdin, for example. He was very popular with voiceovers and stuff, and I think he did something sexist years and years ago. But then that was brought up, and everyone kind of had the idea of like, now he needs to be cancelled, because that now seems to be the public platform that, or actually his career was based on, and now because of this sexist act that was performed many years ago. Obviously, now that's the topic of debate. He needs to be cancelled. That's it. Cancel culture is just like the first thing that needs to be done.
And also that thing that he may have said, it's probably come to light because we're now in a social media world. So
yeah,
in
of
the
course.
last 20 years, the internet has now taken over. There is more access to things, so
Yeah,
people can access stuff that people will have said however many years ago, or have recordings now, or people can type something out thinking that they're going to be safe when actually it's out there for everybody to see. So that's another thing that's changed. So not only do comedians need to keep up to date with the way society's going, and do they want to push the boundaries? Okay, that's fine, that's part of their set, but they need to be aware there might be a backlash. People then are also being called out on things they said however many years ago, because they've now got recordings of it, which at the time it wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
I think that's the reason why a lot of it's gone through like this sort of time, though. Do you think? I mean, if you think about all the jokes that we used to do in school and college back in the day, Alice. I mean, you think about it now. All those jokes were absolutely fine, and no one got really offended. It was like we just thought about it, had a big laugh and joke. But I reckon if you do any sort of the jokes that we did back in the day nowadays, it wouldn't surprise me if someone said to me like, if you're a streamer or a YouTuber, you now need to be cancelled.
I think, yeah, again, that's only 15 years ago, and there are phrases that I know people would have used at school that now absolutely no way can you use those kinds of phrases. And it's interesting, things like 40 Towers, like John Cleese got cancelled, for goodness sake, Monty Python. And
Yeah,
40 Towers got cancelled because there was a certain episode where the colonel, I want to say, or the brigadier, is talking about people, and he's using certain language that is very outdated. And actually, when 40 Towers was released, it was still quite outdated. And the point was, there's a joke on this particular character for being so naive, for using this kind of language. The joke was on that character, but he was still using language that is not appropriate nowadays. And the episode was then, overnight, people started to realize that, it's not appropriate, so we'll remove it. We need to cancel John Cleese. Anyone who's ever watched 40 Towers, oh my gosh, you're a hideous human being, and all of this kind of thing. And John Cleese came out and sort of said, yeah, but at the time people were still using that language and it was okay. But also, what you clearly haven't got is that it's a joke on this person for using that kind of language.
Yeah,
and everyone,
that type of person.
It was that person using that kind of language that the joke was all about. So now there's some sort of warning before the episode or something. You just think that's very of its time.
Well, that was the thing that was also posted on the BBC's website, as well as, council culture is actually growing into erasing of history. It's encouraging the lawlessness of muting citizens as well as celebrities and famous people, radio presenters, comedians, you name it. And it's like they're literally violating the free exchange of ideas through thoughts and speech. And it's like that just seems, if you get a big group of people to be on that sort of bandwagon of cancelled this person or this woman, it's gonna happen. And then once you get a good amount of people on social media all doing the same thing to cancel this individual, you're just that's how they get involved with it. Obviously post it on social, and that's how the ball gets. It's like a snowball effect. You get a little small ball of it, and then once the ball gets rolling, you get more interest from other parts of social media. You obviously could get into Instagram and Facebook, and then YouTubers get involved, streamers get involved, and then it all just blows up and it goes crazy.
Yeah, snowball effect. It's interesting that you mentioned 40 Towers there, Alice, because I when I was looking at, and something that I'd watched a long time ago, and it was made about 15 years ago now, but the Come Fly With Me, I think it was called, by Matt Lewis and David Walliams. It was kind of a story of your average London kind of south airport, Gatwick, London. City, that sort of thing, and it included everything from Matt Luke in pretty much blackface, and David Walliams playing a particularly racist customs agent, and I myself and my friends, to be honest, we found it exceedingly funny, but only because it was just such a big parody on what will have only ever been one or two very extreme characters that we've seen before in YouTube videos or in little Facebook videos and things like that. It wasn't a throw at this isn't what every single person is like. They're hyper inflated sort of characters, like the slightly strange paparazzi and things like that. Now, obviously,
Yeah.
that's one problem, but the BBC, who made certainly produced Come Fly With Me, they took all of it down.
Yeah.
Netflix took it off because it was on Netflix. They took it all down. You won't find it on BritBox or anything like that.
Nope.
They got rid of the lot. They didn't, because some programs they put warnings on now where they just say,
Really?
yeah. Well, some programs
bad. Why would you put warnings on
well,
stuff
no,
though?
I think a warning is better than taking something down. I think in terms of cancel culture, because a warning says,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
click on it just before you watch it. It goes, this was made in a certain time period, and there are certain jokes and themes in this that were representative of the time but are not representative now. Are you sure you still want to watch it? Just letting people know, giving them a sort of a trigger warning almost, is far better than just outright taking something off.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
again,
no, that's understandable.
The phrase that I keep, wanted to say all the time is "it's of its time." So even though that wasn't 45 years ago, like 40 Towers, it was okay to be poking fun at those stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
So and also, you do then end up risking becoming really defensive on the behalf of other cultures and other people, when actually, if you do end up talking to the minorities that perhaps the characters in Come Fly With Me represent, they probably don't care. And I've seen a lot online where a lot of people will say, well, actually, I found that quite funny.
Yeah.
But then you'll have other people saying, oh, no, you can't possibly represent that minority in that way. Oh, it's absolutely terrible. And then, some people in that minority pop up and go, I thought it was funny as well. So I don't really see what, because it's a poking fun at a stereotype. And I do think it's a little bit of a shame that we do have warnings up on certain things like that. Like Gone with the Wind was apparently taken down off some services. It's now been put back up with a warning ahead of it. How does no one know that Gone with the Wind was filmed in the 30s and is set around the Civil War in the 1800s? How do you not have a rough idea when you see the opening that this may have a few representations that aren't quite true to nowadays? How can you possibly watch Gone with the Wind and think, oh yeah, it's okay now to treat black actors the way that they were treated in the 1930s? Like that's just not the case.
If you give someone an inch, they'll take a mile. You have to treat people like essentially, and it's rude to say this, but complete idiots when it comes to that sort of thing. If you don't tell them explicitly, they will F and blind and find all sorts of ways to turn it around and make a scene out of it. I think, and if the warning is the price for that, then fair enough. I think I can live with a warning rather than the product not being there anymore.
As you say, erasing history is not the way to go, because we don't learn from it. We can't study it. We can't use it as an example. And you're right. If it's just a few seconds but ahead of something, it's like the "do not drink me" signs on bleach,
or eating Tide Pods, something like that.
Yeah, again, not too long ago. What was that? 2015, 2016, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that was also another social media phase, as well, as people were doing that sort of. It was just like someone had done it and thought, oh, that looked like fun, and then they just cracked on with it.
That speed, that ferocity at which somebody saying that, oh, that's not really okay, can very quickly turn into like a pitchfork-based witch hunt.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what was the latest thing that it was President what's the orange geezer's face? What's his name?
Mr. Trump, Donald Trump.
Trump, that's it. Yeah, saying about drinking bleach or pouring bleach in your eye or something like that. That was quite recent, and everyone followed that.
Perhaps it's an idea to inject
bleach, wasn't it?
That's it. Yeah, that was a phase that he said, and everyone followed suit. Everyone was like, "Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll do that." But you never turned around and said we should cancel Donald Trump. I never heard anything about that, unless I did, but I was very, very minimalistic.
Yeah, there were plenty of people who did. There's a thing: politicians, actors, writers, everything alike. If they're found to have done something after they've had like a long career, either as a politician and acting very good policy, or as an actor doing lots of very good films, like for example Kevin Spacey, and J.K. Rowling as a writer. Kevin Spacey obviously was. It was revealed he'd done lots of fairly unsavory things. I say fairly, very unsavory things that I'm not going to dive into. But he's also made lots and lots of very good films. The Usual Suspects, L.A. Confidential, obviously House of Cards. He's been in lots of very good things. Does then his work prior to all of that stuff coming out, does that work then have to be boycotted? Do we think?
Oh, that's where I get very torn with cancel culture. Where yes, I sort of think people should be held accountable for what they've done. So yes, he has been accused of being an abuser. So yes, he should be punished for that kind of thing. But you're quite right. Does that mean that we can't then watch the usual suspects? Does that then mean we can't do this, that, and the other? Like Harvey Weinstein, absolutely. He's abused a lot of women. Cancel him. But you know how many are Oscar-winning movies?
Weinstein Productions. I know it's certainly the ones.
Yeah,
good. It's
exactly.
Not, I think popular films.
So
like,
do you then
transgender stuff and the books and then the films as well? That's such a big.
It's massive. It's a whole world. But what was interesting with that also is not knowing the full complete story. She'd said certain things. She then wrote her own essay explaining her way of thinking, which was huge. It was absolutely massive. And another point with cancel culture is that it's a little bit like Chinese whispers. So people immediately started bad-mouthing her and saying awful things about her, then picked what they wanted from her response essay. And when you read into that, there's so much more to it, and I couldn't quite get my head around all of it, but there's a lot in there that suggests that some of what she said comes from previous trauma and experiences and various other things. But people were completely ignoring that and just taking small things that she'd said online and totally blowing it out into massive proportions. And again, it's small things that you'll end up catch up on, like the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard situation. Immediately, don't go and see a Johnny Depp film. Don't go and see a Johnny Depp film. Don't see it. Don't do that. Don't give him all that money. Oh no, he can't do that. And then
people took sides. You know.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. And then a year later, there's suddenly all of this proof that perhaps she was the one doing. The abuse. And you sort of think, well, because people just took small parts of this story because they didn't know the whole thing, you've suddenly destroyed someone's entire life. So your Harvey Weinsteins and your Kevin Spaceys, there's proof there. So that's really, really difficult when a lot of their work is ingrained in our culture. And then Johnny Depp, also, don't go and see his film. Don't go and do that. Johnny Depp's already been paid. So
he was paid for something. It was the next Harry Potter film. It was after what's it called, Crimes of Grindelwald. He was playing Grindelwald, and he was supposed to be in the next one. And he filmed one scene, so they had to pay him his entire fee, and then replaced him with Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah, and then I think the movie before that. I'm pulling an absolute blank as to what it was. People were saying, "Don't go and see it. Don't go and see it." He's already been paid to do that. Like, they wrapped that about a year ago, guys. So all you're doing is affecting everyone else who was part of that film by not going and seeing it and not supporting the movie industry because you don't want to see a Johnny Depp movie.
And Hollywood actor will also take a percentage of gross earnings. You know, they'll ask for that.
Yeah.
Certainly, so back then, certainly somebody like Johnny Depp, who billed that highly, you know, he'd done the Pirates of the Caribbean stuff so much more as well. He could ask for that and he'd get that. So people I think, sort of reason to boycott the film if they wanted to. But again, he has already been paid something of a fee. You're right.
Yeah, so actually the idea of the cancel culture is to make sure that we can move forward as a society, that we are inclusive, that we are tolerant. It pushes us into a positive direction, but the problem is, by going very extreme and not having all of the information, all it does is just sort of say, oh, we'll just cancel Johnny Depp. There's no there are consequences. Obviously, part of his career has been affected. However, recently he's been brought on board for a new film. So actually, he's still working and he's still getting money. So there's no major punishment there. Same with Amber Heard. So she wasn't cut from any of her films, despite the fact he was, when everyone suddenly realized actually she was probably as bad as him, if not worse.
Yeah.
You know, depending, I don't know the full story. It's just like J.K. Rowling stuff. I don't know all of the stuff she said. I didn't,
really does.
you know,
As you said,
nobody ever does.
because it's so murky, is that kind of social media infighting almost.
Yeah.
It's so hard to ascertain what is what essentially. Yeah.
And again, doing this on behalf of other people, it's just so murky. It's just so murky when the idea of it is positive. We're not going to put up with this stuff anymore. The Me Too movement, massive, really important, highlighted a lot of stuff that should never have been going on for men and women. But then if people take it to the extreme, you then get people like Henry Cavill, who openly said, I'm now lifting my female friends a hug, because things have got so extreme at certain points. And it's like, no, that's not the point of it. It's not the point to make everyone on edge. It's just to highlight what has happened and to make sure that going forward, that kind of stuff doesn't happen.
Yeah. I think there's a justification in being. You mentioned Henry Cavill there. It says he's cautious about hugging female friends and the like. I think obviously there's a thing there. He's probably had people have a go at him, and the internet has had a go at him for stuff that even remotely looks anything like that. Because again, he's done a lot of films, a lot of interviews, that sort of thing. So that kind of it drags into that. And I can understand his and so many other people's angst in that regard. It's so much while it isn't the point of as you say, the Me Too movement, it's a causality, I think, and so many people don't understand that this cancel culture isn't all good. People can suffer, lots of things can suffer like that, but it can't be at the cost of everybody else. I think I'm saying that right.
Yeah, it absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree.
At the cost of somebody else isn't really a victory at all.
Yeah,
it's from a film somewhere. don't
and it's like these people will sort of jump on board with this kind of thing and go to all of these extremes because there are no consequences for them saying things as well. So although ultimately, depending on who you are cancelling, if they are a big enough celebrity, there's not huge amounts of consequences. So Kevin Spacey may not work. He's still got his millions of pounds and his big mansions, and someone somewhere is still going to say, yeah, we'll put him in this commercial because he's Kevin Spacey. Whereas there are consequences for, people further down the chain behind their computers or people that are around them and things. And it's, you can't, none of us are perfect.
No.
All of us have said something or done something that someone else would deem inappropriate.
You notice though, obviously, that it's only ever famous people that, I say only ever, but usually only ever famous people that end up in this social media kind of court of public opinion. But that's because they already have exposure. You throw as I said at the start, you can have social media teams throw as much glitter on your life as you want, and you can do as much good as you want. But if you've done some bad as well, it's going to end up.
They're sure to dig that up, no problem.
Yeah, and that's it. And again, it brings that discussion of is all the good that they did in the world therefore worthless because of the bad things they did? It's kind of that balance. And I'd point out as well that it's not just limited to politics and acting. Anna Wintour, obviously the journalist slash head of Vogue, she was last year kind of thrust into this cancel culture type deal when she was accused of prioritizing Caucasian employees and readers over black employees and readers, and that included everything from kind of editors of the Vogue magazine to talent and prioritizing target audiences in the Caucasian category. and she's, as far as I know, she's still in charge of Vogue. But at the same, all that bad stuff and the Devil Wears Prada type stigma, she has accelerated the fashion industry forward. One could argue. So it's absolutely not just this one bracket. It's never just acting and politics.
Oh no, there's a lot of brackets. But I think a lot of the brackets do kind of get swept under the rug. And there's like a few brackets that are kind of really in everyone's faces all the time, and I think that's what a lot of councillors like to kind of keep their attention to.
That's a case of, obviously, the forefront of social media, and everything these days is politics and films, I suppose.
Yes, politics and
that's
entertainment.
what they always say, though. I mean, they always say that using social media to call attention to actions that don't agree with, that anyone doesn't agree with, is probably one of the great consequences for those who have more power in society. So if you have got all of your actors, comedians, politicians, or people that are writers or movie producers or anything, that power can come in a great big form of money for influences. And then any other times, councillors say that the power comes from their race or gender. But it all depends on what sort of group they've got, as the ball rolls. As soon as they get that attention, that's it. They're in the media or on the press or in some social media news pages, because I know you've got Twitter, you've got like the little what do they call it, like moments, haven't they? So it shows you what's going on in your location, so they can see what's going on. Trending, that's it. Yeah, they can see what's trending. I mean, it's exactly the same with YouTubers. They have a trending page. So if there's like an event or a newscast and someone's done a couple of clips of, I don't know, for example, BBC News or something, or Fox News in America, for example, people are going to use clips like that, and then they're going to make their own video. They're going to do like they analyze a video and they talk over it and they kind of explain certain bits and bobs, or if not, or they just give their general opinion on it. But if there's
nowadays trending that you say, it's kind of what used to be the news at 10.
No, that's definitely it.
The news at 10 used to show you, if something big and mad and insane had happened that day, and it was kind of the last thing you watched before you sort of wound down and went to bed. Nowadays it'll pop up as a notification on your phone on your way to work or in work, while you're sat on the toilet. It's everywhere, and that immediacy is obviously added to the explosiveness of it all.
I mean, I suppose the only a positive thing from the trending is that obviously news at 10, that's it, your news at 10. Whereas nowadays, you can actually look at all these different platforms. So you can see the same story, and it's odd because it's a positive thing. You can see this story being shared by all these different people and all these different papers and all these different websites and social media pages. But the negative thing is you can then see this story being shared by all of these social media pages, by all of these papers, and you can see this one story that's just being twisted and I'm back to Chinese whisper again. You've got one story and then it goes down, like you're saying about Vogue. So it's not just politicians and the entertainment industry. Mr. Potato Head is now cancelled.
Very recently.
Oh Jesus, yeah, I saw that. It was quite recent, wasn't it?
And
I can't believe
actually,
they've done that.
when you look into it, it's actually not Mr. Potato Head. They're not making him gender neutral. The brand is called Mr. Potato Head, and he's Mr. Potato Head. They got Mrs. Potato Head, you whatever else. They're changing the name to Potato Head, so it's like an entire family, so that they can expand. So Mr. Potato Head is still going to have his moustache, and he's still going to have his bowler hat, and he's still going to be Mr. Potato Head. But everyone around me was saying Mr. Potato Head's been cancelled. That's it. Put the one that we've been playing with back in the box, keep it because it's special now, because we're never going to have a Mr. Potato Head ever again. No, the company rebranded itself. Yeah. And all you saw was Mr. Potato Head been cancelled. Can't play with him anymore. Get rid of the Mr. and all that kind of jazz. So it's amazing how we absorb this information as well.
As much as that is obviously, that's a bad thing, obviously. I mean, the Potato Head, I think Hasbro probably owns the brand. They probably just damaged themselves by doing that publicly. If they'd just changed the company name quietly, which you can do generally.
Yeah.
is they could have just changed it quietly to Potato Head. They decided to kind of do it loud. I bet they wish they didn't.
Yes, yeah, and it's all very well meaning, but society told them no, it's not very well meaning. But then society told them, who wrote that rule that it wasn't okay for them to do that?
Well, society wrote that rule, I think, is the problem, and that is cancel culture. Is society writes the rules as a whole. Again, but it's not just society. Individuals, powerful individuals, can kind of start things off. They can cause boycotts. Back in, this is obviously we're going a few years back. Back in 2016, Will Smith and his wife Jada, they said they were going to boycott the Oscars and kind of the Academy.
Yeah.
Of I can't remember the full title of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. There we go. I had it on my notes. They were going to boycott that because there was in 2016 there wasn't a single black nominee at all. Now I can't quite remember what came out in 2016, but I mean, obviously the Oscars has its own stigma about it kind of being just a lot of old men voting, on what they liked in that year.
Yeah.
But it's a case of the things can change for the better, because by 2019, they had the world record of the highest amount of black nominees since the inception of the Oscars. So within 3 years, Will and Jada Smith going on this public campaign to boycott the Oscars, suddenly is it a case of lots more films with black actors and that kind of culture in there were produced, or is it a case of the public changed it? And I think it's a bit of both, honestly. But it's that example that individuals can do things as well. Powerful individuals can start cancel culture off. As we mentioned, Donald Trump spreading disinformation, tried to cancel all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Just were completely false, I suppose, in a sense. That was my primary example for that. And it's
amazing that they're on a knife edge, aren't they? So that could have gone one way or it could have gone the other. Thankfully, it went a very positive way, and I think it highlighted to people that there do need to be more minorities in movies. Why are there not enough black people being cast? Why are there not enough ethnic minorities being given these opportunities to just get to that level, never mind at Oscar level, at any level in the film industry? Why are they not allowing these opportunities to be shared? And it really could have gone the other way. And that is an example of a positive thing. That is a very good example of how it swung society to use it in a very positive way. But if I'm honest, that's one of probably the few times that I think cancel culture has worked. I think
it doesn't. I agree with you there in that sense, that it doesn't work far more often than it does work. I think generally because we only ever hear about it when there's a strong case for it kind of to work, but it depends what you define as it working.
Yeah.
It is, because as we've mentioned, should somebody being cancelled, should that then have all their past work be ruined and destroyed? Ellen,
did you hear about the one where they tried to cancel Eminem, and then they tried to cancel Ricky Gervais? I think it was at one stage. I think he was doing
good luck cancelling Ricky Gervais.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Ricky Gervais,
he fights back, doesn't he?
Yeah, he doesn't care.
Oh, yeah, and then some, doesn't he?
Yeah, he doesn't care. It was like John Cleese, just didn't care whatsoever. Called everyone out for being so ridiculous and not understanding their jokes, basically, which is what it was for them.
I think that as obviously we kick this off quite a bit with comedians. I think with comedians, it's a case of they've already got that backbone. They're not scared of the media. They're not scared of what people have to say about them, because they've justified it themselves already.
Yeah. I mean, they've been doing those sort of jokes for many years, and everyone's kind of taking a big laugh, and they've just taken it with a grain of salt. But then when you get some people that are like, I'm offended, and then they get everyone else that they find offended by that, and they just literally make it a mountain out of a molehill, and sometimes it could get really, really bad and really ugly as well.
Yeah.
And the positives that can come from it, like the Will Smith and the Jada Smith pushing for people to be aware, and the Me Too movement, the positives that came out of that, it's just like accountability shouldn't equal complete cancellation for people. People should be made aware, and you should be accountable for your actions. But why do people have to be absolutely cancelled
Yeah, I mean, I
for
don't even
something they've done?
understand why they. Yeah.
Why can't they learn from what they've done?
Well, but even if it's something that's happened years and years ago, I mean, why do you need to bring up the past? If it was, at the time, it was socially okay to do it then. Why is it now need to be dragged up again,
I think
10, 20 years later?
That depends on the case, I think, because there's some things that, obviously a joke that was said 10 years ago that was acceptable 10 years ago, or was borderline acceptable 10 years ago, and definitely isn't acceptable now, it's a discussion that it can be a bit knife edge, but there's very much a case of it happened, it was a long time ago, we're recognizing now that it's not okay now, and it won't happen again. I think the issue there is that there's also cases like the Ellen DeGeneres thing that happened last year, where she was several of her kind of employees and some celebrities came out and said that she's really not very nice to her staff, because obviously she has her TV show and things like that. She's really not nice to and she really hasn't been nice to her staff in the past, and she's still not nice now. I think it's that what happened in the past has happened in the past. Now, obviously, there's a degree of what's okay and what's not there. Not okay there. Obviously, the Harvey Weinstein stuff that we mentioned, things like that, and poor treatment of staff just isn't okay. As far as I know, Ellen's still got her own show, that sort of thing. So there's a degree, and nobody quite knows what that degree is. It's like a fuel gauge, and nobody knows where it goes empty quite just yet.
Do you think we'll ever figure that out?
Yes, I do, eventually. But I think it's going to take quite a bit longer than we're seeing now. We're going to be seeing it for quite a while. But I think eventually we will hope. I certainly hope. But maybe that's the pitfall. I hope we see that kind of change. Yeah, I think unless either of you two have anything else that you want to raise, you've saved any notes for last, things like that. I think that kind of rounds it out, sort of thing.
That's quite a nice note to end on. I think actually your nice positivity. That's really nice.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, mate. Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head with that one, Owen.
Okay, thank you very much, you two, for that. It was quite a bit of fun, actually. I went into that thinking we were going to end up just having a really droll conversation about cancel culture, and it turned out quite well. So thank you both. Thank you both for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. It was a great opportunity. I could talk on this for hours. Brilliant.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. This has been the Deep Dive Podcast. I'm your host, Owen, and I will see you hopefully in episode 2. Goodbye.